25 years ago this month, I took my very first cruise on board the Carnival Tropical. Maybe some of you remember that old ship. At the time, it was the oldest ship in Carnival's fleet, and I decided no better way to celebrate my 25th cruise, a big milestone cruise, than to go back to Carnival Cruise Line, the cruise line that started it all for me. So this is my official review of my recent cruise on board the Carnival Pride. Hello everyone, my name is Zach. I am the Traveling Man, and I was really excited to sail on board the Carnival Pride recently. The ship has recently undergone major renovations. They've updated so many things with the ship. First of all, they've painted the outside hull of the ship the blue and white like they've done all the ships in their fleet at this point. They've also updated their shops, the Via Veneto, and gave a new look to that. They've revamped the spa into a Cloud 9 spa, which is just the typical spa that Carnival carries on board all their ships. They also redid their David Steakhouse. They refurbed it just a little bit. Basically, it was just a rename, as I found out, to the Fahrenheit 555. That is, of course, the steakhouse Carnival has on most of its ships. And there was other renovations as well. I've already made a video on that and covered some of those, so go back and watch that video. But in this video, I want to tell you all about my cruise experience on board the Carnival Pride, and I have a lot to talk about. It was a 9-day cruise, my first time ever on a Spirit class of ship, and these ships debuted in the early 2000s, so you're talking a ship that's probably about 21, 22 years old, the Carnival Pride, so it was definitely time for the ship to undergo refurbishment. Now, on this 9-day voyage, I left from Dover, England, and sailed up to Norway. We had 6 full days in Norway, and I was really excited to see what the Carnival cruise experience would be like outside the Caribbean. Carnival usually only sends one of their ships each year over to Europe, unlike all the other cruise lines. All the other cruise lines send multiple ships at least. Carnival only sends one, and for the past few years, it's been the Carnival Pride. I didn't know what was it going to be like? What is cruising on Carnival going to be like in Europe? So in this video, I'm going to tell you all about that. And how we're going to go about this is through my 5 steps process. If you've never watched one of my steps review before, where the S is for the ship. We'll talk all about the ship and what I thought about that and give it a rating. The T is for taste, or the food, and I'll also say here this will be an abbreviated discussion of the food on board Carnival Pride. I will do another video coming after this. We'll talk just about all the food I had on board the ship and review it and tell you, where to eat, where to avoid, things like that. The E is for entertainment, and there was a lot of entertainment on board the ship, and I'm excited to tell you about. The P, of course, is for ports, and we were in Norway, so you're going to see some beautiful footage of Norway coming up in that section. And then the S is for service. We'll talk all about the service I received on board the Carnival Pride, how the crew was, and I have a lot to tell you about that. So let's just jump right on into it here. We'll start with the S for ship. And the Carnival Pride isn't a huge ship. We had about 2,400 on the sailing that I went on. So it's one of the smaller ships in Carnival's fleet. And of course, also one of the oldest now in Carnival's fleet. So when I first walked on board, I was like, whoa, I was sort of shocked by the look of everything on board the ship, because the ship has a certain aesthetic that cruise ships had back in the early 2000s, but you don't really see that on new and more modern cruise ships. It's a very classic cruise ship aesthetic, but I will say that they have kept the ship in really good condition despite it being over 20 years old. And I'm not just talking about the new renovations. The areas that weren't renovated, they've been kept up fairly well. So I was very satisfied with the look of the ship. I don't think it was run down or anything like that. I did find a couple of favorite areas to hang out around the ship. One of those being the Sunset Garden, and I'll tell you about this. It should be the secret garden because you kind of have to look for it and you might miss it if you don't just happen to be in the right place. Because one day I would just happen to be right outside the theater on deck 3 and I noticed this entrance to Sunset Garden and I was like, what is that? And I started walking and it's this entire hallway that wraps all the way around the front of the ship, really. But there's seating up there. There's very few people up there. It does get busy from time to time because a lot of the crew take that. That's sort of their entrance back to the crew-only area. So there's a lot of crew navigating that area, but there weren't a lot of passengers. And you could just sit. I like to go there and read sometimes. So check out the Sunset Garden if you're going to be sailing on board the Carnival Pride. That ended up being one of my favorite places. I also really enjoyed the promenade area on the ship. This is on deck 3. And it is an outdoor deck, so you can walk outside, right outside the theater there, walk all the way to the back of the ship, and then around the back of the ship, back up the other side. And I always enjoy an outside deck. I love being up close to the ocean. I like being down low to the water, so you feel like the ocean is just right there beside you. So I really enjoyed that and went out there walking several days. I also really enjoyed the 10th deck of the ship, the deck just up above the Lido deck, because there's a nice walking track that goes pretty much all the way around deck 10. So a huge walking track, and that's something you really don't see a lot on modern cruise ships. It's like they're building these new cruise ships today, they don't really have a good place to walk or jog outside. But that's one of the good things about the Carnival Pride. I enjoyed having daily walks out there on that deck, especially when we were at sea. I also enjoyed that, even though I'm not going to use them, I enjoyed that there was a water park on the back. They had really cool looking slides. Of course, it was quite cool this cruise, so not a lot of people using those. But if you are someone who enjoys water slides on a cruise ship, they got it on the Carnival Pride for you. I also really enjoyed the Serenity area that they have on the back of the Lido deck. This is, of course, for adults 21 years and older, but it was a really nice place to go hang out, especially in the evening or after dinner, or sometimes even at midnight, because we were sailing in Norway and the sun didn't set till just about midnight some nights, and it was really cool to go out there and just sit and watch the sunset, just have a little bit of quiet. Of course, it's quite breezy back there. You're on the back of the ship, but I really think they did a great job having the Serenity area on the back of the ship on the Carnival Pride. But something else I really liked about the ship was the internet. And the premium internet I bought before the cruise. They have a couple of different options for internet. One's the social media package where you can just get on like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and things like that. And then they have the premium internet, which is like the streaming internet. You can stream things and pretty much use the internet all you want. And they do have Starlink now on the Carnival Pride. It was brand new during the dry dock, and it was super fast all over the ship, but don't depend on having internet inside your stateroom. It just depends on where your stateroom is, on how well your internet will be. There were a few things that I didn't like as much, or it's not that I didn't like it, it's just some things I wanted to mention so that you should be aware of, because I was sort of surprised about. One of these being like virtually no hand sanitizer on board the ship, because I'm someone now, everywhere I go, every time I walk down the stairs or touch a railing, I'm looking for the hand sanitizer, especially if I'm going into the dining room. Very few hand sanitizer stations around the ship, and if there were available, you really had to look for them. I finally found on like the last day of the cruise in the main dining room, right on the very side of the podium where the hostess for the dining room stands, there was a little dispenser there. You had to really be looking for it. Different from what other cruise lines are doing now. A lot of cruise lines have those hand sanitizer things all around the ship, but not on the Carnival Pride. The Hub app, that's Carnival's app. They want you to use it while you're on board the ship. You can go on there and look at the activities. You can add them to your planner. It'll give you alerts when it's almost time for that activity. You also have to use the app now when you're going to go to the main dining room, especially if you have your time dining where you can go anytime to eat, but you have to go on the app and actually like claim your table. And there were some issues with that because sometimes for your time dining, it would be 45-minute. One night I think I waited just over an hour to get my table. So that's not great if you're having your time dining. Like, don't let so many people have your time dining if you can't accommodate that many people within an hour, because that seems excessive. It's not your time dining then, because you're still subject to a long wait when you request a table. So that's my only complaint with the Hub app. Other than that, the Hub app was really great. You can also buy your shore excursions on there. You can look at spa treatments and book those on there. So I think Carnival does a really good job. The one complaint I do have about their Hub app is that you cannot use it once you're off of Carnival Wi-Fi. So if you're spending a day in port and maybe you're on a long bus ride and you're like, hey, what's for dinner tonight on the ship? I'm going to look at the menu. You can't do it because you can't access the Hub app unless you're on ship's Wi-Fi. So didn't care for that. Otherwise, the Hub app is great, and I really like the direction that Carnival's going in. I've seen them improve this over the past 5 or 10 years, and I think they're at a really good place with it. And also under ship, I'm going to put the embarkation process, because this was the easiest embarkation process I think I've ever had in my life. I actually booked Carnival's transportation. They took me from London Heathrow Airport over to the port at Dover, and it took like less than 15 minutes from the time I entered there until the time I got on the ship. I never stopped walking. There was no wait to board the ship. It was really great. All the people there in Dover were incredibly nice, and it was a great embarkation day because of that. I also wanted to mention the Cloud9 Spa, because I did visit that. The newly renovated Cloud9 Spa was very nice. It looked like you're on a brand new ship in some of those rooms. But I actually got my first massage I've ever gotten on a cruise ship. It was a 50-minute Swedish massage, and I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed the Cloud9 Spa. Everyone in there was nice. The atmosphere and ambiance in there was really conducive to relaxing. Oh, also forgot to mention my stateroom. I did have a premium balcony stateroom. This cruise, I originally booked for just a regular balcony, and then probably about 3 months before the cruise, they actually sent me an email, and then I logged on to my cruise planner, and they had invited me to upgrade. So I upgraded from a regular balcony to the premium balcony for $699. And the premium balcony is actually, despite everything that you see before the cruise, once you get on board the ship, it's classified as a suite. And you can see some of the clips I'm putting there. It's a huge room, a very outdated look to the room, I'll say that, but it's still a very nice room. I had so much space. And the balcony was the best part, because it was a super large balcony. The balcony had completely been renovated recently, so all the railings were brand new. The paint on the balcony was brand new. While you were sitting on the balcony, just looking off, enjoying the view and seeing, all the new furnishings on the balcony, you could think you're on a brand new ship because it was like a brand new balcony, and I really enjoyed that. The door was brand new. Inside the stateroom, they had literally just replaced the mattress, like right before I got on the ship, like the morning I got on the ship, and new pillows and everything. So a really good stateroom. I really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed the Carnival Pride. Would absolutely sell this ship again. I'm giving it a solid 4 out of a 5 rating. Next up is T for taste, where we're going to talk about food just a little bit. And I'll start off by saying that overall the food was good on this Carnival cruise. However, the main dining room left a lot to be desired, especially dinner in the main dining room. Talking about the brunch that they have on Carnival cruises, because that's one of the best meals, in my opinion, you can have on a Carnival cruise ship. And they only have this brunch on sea days. It's called the Sea Day Brunch, of course. And I got to eat there twice this cruise, and I really enjoyed it. I think that the brunch I had on the first sea day was probably the best meal I had the entire cruise, because I had that skillet cake and it was cooked so perfectly. All the flavors of it were tremendous. I had it with some chicken sausage, and that was just perfectly prepared. It had such good flavor. And then I also had some crispy hash browns. And y'all, Carnival has the best hash browns at sea. Can we all get a thumbs up for those hash browns? Because I love the crispy hash browns, the little hash brown rounds that they have in the main dining room on a Carnival cruise ship. And I know all cruise lines have those same type of hash browns, but Carnival has the best, I promise you on that. But that was probably the best meal that I had the entire cruise. I love the sea day brunch inside the main dining room on Carnival ships. I love the lunchtime offerings that they have on board Carnival ships as well, because Carnival does grab and go food. And what I mean by grab and go, I mean like, dining establishments on the Lido deck by the pool, or something you can basically get food at, in the heart of the day, in the afternoon and into the early evening, outside of the main dining rooms. And on this ship, Carnival had the Blue Iguana Cantina, which is where you can get tacos and burritos at lunchtime, or you can get breakfast burritos in the morning. And then they also have Guy's Burger Joint. And I love Guy's Burger Joint. I've always loved Guy's Burger. And I know just about everyone that's ever had one loves them and is addicted to it. For this reason, I had like 5 throughout the course of the cruise, because they are so good. And I don't know of any other cruise line that has an establishment like Guy's Burger right there on the Lido deck that you can go up and get a free hamburger, and it's that good. So I think Carnival really excels in that area. They do really good at the grab and go options. Now, one of the establishments, when I was reading and hearing about the dry dock refurbishments they were doing, I was just crossing my fingers they were going to announce that they were putting a Shaq's Big Chicken on board the Carnival Pride. Now, they have this on the Mardi Gras and the Celebration, and I think maybe another ship or two that they've renovated. And I was hoping that would happen with Carnival Pride. It didn't, but I think it would be perfect for this ship. That's another one of those food options that's free. It's included in the cost of your cruise, and you can just grab a good chicken sandwich and go. But still, you have solid offerings with Guy's Burger Joint and Blue Iguana Cantina. They also have the buffet available at lunchtime. I didn't eat off the buffet pretty much the whole cruise. I think I went there one time and got some stuff off the chopsticks offering, which is more Asian cuisine, and that was really good food. So I think the afternoon offerings, the lunch offerings they have on Carnival are really good. Of course, I love the sea day brunch. However, we get to dinner in the main dining room, and that's where we can maybe run into a few problems, because sometimes the food wasn't warm, sometimes the food was just mediocre at best. So I wasn't a huge fan of the food in the main dining room. I also dined for dinner twice at the Fahrenheit 555 Steakhouse. And I wanted to do this because I knew it was newly renovated. I want to get the vibe for it. And I thought it would be sort of an elevated, upgraded dining experience from the main dining room. However, it was just okay. It was not the best Fahrenheit 555 experience I've had on a Carnival cruise before. That's definitely been on other ships. So I wasn't extremely satisfied with either of the dining I had in there. Now, the service in Fahrenheit 555 was next level. I always had great servers in there, but the food just left a lot to be desired in there, especially when you're paying, I think it's $48 per person now additional. I did enjoy that spiced ribeye that they have in there, though. Man, that was, again, if the skillet cake was the best thing I had on board the ship, then that spiced ribeye was probably the second best thing I had, because it was really good. I also tried Chef's Table for the very first time on this cruise. And y'all, if you've never had that Chef's Table experience before, you need to try it because it was fantastic. If you don't know what chef's table is, it's an experience that 14 or less people, and most of them are going to be strangers to you, but that you get to have together. And it starts out in the galley. The main chef meets you and takes you down into the galley, and he shows you what's going on. And this is in the heart of like dinner operations. So the servers are coming in, they're getting plates of food to take it up to the main dining room to people who are waiting on it. You get to have 5 or 6 different little dishes there in the galley that have been pre-prepared for you. And then after that, they take you up to deck 1, where a brand new room, also a part of the renovations that they made, but a chef's table room was waiting. Beautiful. Again, could have told me I was on a brand new ship and I would have believed it because it was just stunning in there. And you got to have, I don't even know how many courses. It was like, I think 9 or 10 courses once you get inside of there. And there was wine and there was food. And it was just a really cool experience. If you really like food and really like to know like flavors and have a chef explain to you all the flavors, if you want to get to eat food like you're not going to get to eat anywhere else on the ship, you want to check out the chef's table. Now, I paid $99 for this chef's table experience, and I did book it in advance of the cruise. I wouldn't wait till you're on board the cruise because on this cruise I was on, they only had 3 offerings of chef's table. And I think they were all just about booked up. So make sure you look for that on your next cruise and try it if you never have before, because I was blown away and like blown up in size too when the chef's table was over, because it's so much food. It's like a 3.5-hour experience when all is said and done. But really enjoyed chef's table and can't recommend it enough. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention while we're talking about taste and while we're talking about food is that all the menus on board Carnival ships now are all digital, meaning you're going to want to take your cell phone to dinner when you go, and they're going to have a QR code there on the table. You can just scan it and it'll pull up the menu. As long as you're on ship's Wi-Fi, it'll pull up the menu and you're going to be able to pick from there. They're not really bringing around paper menus unless you specifically ask for them. So that's a little bit new to me. I hadn't experienced a fully digital menu situation yet, but they certainly were doing it on board Carnival Pride, so wanted to mention that. So all in all, for taste on board the Carnival Pride, I'm going to give a rating of 3.5 out of a 5. Next up is the E for entertainment. And there was a lot of entertainment to be found all around Carnival Pride. From the main theater, the Taj Mahal, they had 3 main production shows throughout the course of the cruise. This is, of course, with the main production cast. One of those was 88 Keys. The other one was, I forget the exact name of it, but it was like a beach theme show that was really cool. But all the main production shows that I caught were good, and I enjoyed those. They also had guest performers throughout the cruise. Of course, this is a 9-day cruise, so the cast can't perform every night. So they did bring on guest performers. There were a couple of nights where there were vocalists in the main theater. They also had a juggler one night. They had the Love and Marriage show, which is sort of like the Newlywed Game. Carnival is really known for doing that on all their cruises. So a lot of entertainment options inside the main theater and even outside the main theater too, all around the ship, from the atrium, back in the Alchemy bar area, in the nightclub. They always had live music going on, so it was really nice. No matter what area of the ship you were walking around or exploring, you could hear live music off in the background somewhere. They also had the piano bar, which is wildly popular on board Carnival ships, and that's a nightly pianist who's in there taking requests, and it's always a really good time. Every time I walked by there were folks like just having the time of their lives in there. They also had a lot of karaoke throughout the course of the cruise in various different venues. Of course, there is tons of trivia. I think Carnival probably does more trivia than any other cruise line I've ever been on. There's also deck parties. They had a couple of different deck parties. It was the 4th of July while I was sailing, so they had a 4th of July party. Carnival's whole thing is fun. It's the fun ships. That's their brand, is the brand of fun. And they do it well. I think there are probably more activities on board a Carnival ship than any other cruise line that I have sailed with. They do such a good job, no matter what time of day it is, of having something going on to entertain the entire family. They also had movies by the pool each night. There's Seaside Theater right there on the Lido deck, and it was cool because the Lido deck on board the Carnival Pride has a retractable roof. So for most of this sailing, that roof was shut because it was chilly. But you could sit out there at night and watch a nice movie and just enjoy being on the ocean watching a film. So I think Carnival does entertainment really well on all their ships. The thing I love the most, though, about the entertainment on board Carnival ships is the Punchliner Comedy Club. And this was located down in the Butterflies Lounge, which is on the first deck of the ship. And the Punchliner Comedy Club has nightly comedy shows. And I love going to Punchliner Comedy. You know, you go have a good dinner, and then you can go enjoy 2 or 3 comedy shows if you want to a night and see both of the comedians on board the ship. And that's what Carnival does the best of any cruise line, is entertainment and fun and having events, and they really outdid themselves on this cruise, and that's why I'm giving entertainment a solid 4 out of a 5 rating. Next up is P for ports, and y'all, we went to Norway, and it was probably the prettiest place I've ever been in my entire life. I loved this itinerary so much. We had 2 sea days, one on the way out, one on the way back, and in the middle we had 6 days, 6 different ports to explore beautiful Norway. We started out in Bergen, which is the second largest city in Norway, and then from there we went up to Alesund, we went to Molde, we went to Olden, we went to Skjolden, and then we ended up at Haugesund. And all of these ports were tremendous. You got to learn so much about the history and the culture of Norway. I got to go on a number of different hikes and be outdoor in nature. There's something to be said about taking a cruise like this where you go to one country and focus there for 6 days, or focus all your ports in that one country. So it was really cool because I feel like I got to really get to know Norway. I really got to see it. It wasn't like, like you go into the Caribbean, which is fine. I love the Caribbean, but you're in a different country every day. You're on a different island every day. It was really nice to just focus my attention on Norway for 6 days. And it was a beautiful place. I'm going to have a vlog all about all the places that we visited in Norway. You'll see some of the excursions I went on and some of the things I saw. That'll be coming soon too. So make sure you subscribe and come back to see that vlog coming very soon, because y'all, some of the best footage I think I've ever taken before, and I can't wait to show you that video. So for ports, I can't give it anything but a 5 out of a 5. You have to go to Norway. And last up, we have the S for service. And there's a couple of things we need to talk about here. By and large, the crew on board Carnival Pride were fantastic. But there were some crew, sometimes when they're helping you out or serving you in the dining room or something like that, I felt like an imposition. Like it just wasn't personable service. There definitely was hardly ever any personable service in the main dining room. They never really called you by your name. I think I maybe had a server or two that called me by my name. And I don't think that this is much an indication of the crew and their ability on board the ship. I just think that they might have been a little understaffed. There were times in the main dining room, particularly at breakfast, there would be like 2 servers, 2 crew members over like 30 people that were just sitting there waiting on food. And Carnival says it on their menu, that they, on port days when you go in there for breakfast, they want to get you in and out in less than 30 minutes. They know you got excursions and things to get to. However, they didn't stick by that. I feel like Carnival could do better with their service on board Carnival Pride. I also had a technical issue on board the ship, and I was trying to get guest services to help me, and they were quite rude to me about this issue. And I'm always nice and understanding. I never go and go Karen on anyone. I always try to be nice and understanding, and they were just like telling me that the problem I was having wasn't real and there was no way it was real, and they just didn't want to take any steps to help me. I had to end up going a couple different times and talking to a couple different people to actually get anyone to follow up on my issue. And ultimately the issue was never resolved. They said there was nothing they could do about it, but it was just kind of disheartening for them to tell me that I was wrong. So I can't give service the typical 5 out of 5 that I give on board this cruise, because they do have issues. But again, I think it's probably from the crew being overwhelmed. I just maybe think there might be areas where there could be more crew, especially in the main dining room. The service could be better there. So for service on board Carnival Pride, I'm going to give a 3.5 out of a 5 rating. So when we consider all of those ratings for the 5 different steps together, we get a total of a 4 out of a 5 rating. And that's a really good rating. I look back on some of my past cruises I've been on, and Carnival Pride's up there. I had a really good cruise on board the ship. I can't wait to go on Carnival again. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative. If you did, please go down below, give this video a thumbs up. It does help out my channel greatly. And if you enjoyed me and my presentation, consider subscribing to the channel, because I always do reviews just like this one for all the cruise ships I go on. And I have a lot of cruise ships coming up, a lot of fun cruises over the next year. So you want to make sure you see those reviews of those cruise ships. And I do have much more content to come from the Carnival Pride, and you'll want to see all that too. Folks, thank you again for watching. And until next time, I'll see you on the next adventure.